I ain't gonna lie. Put some Brittany Jane on, some calm on. Put Brittany Jane out of Denver, Colorado. All right. I'm in the live. Candid Talk, episode 147. Let's go. I'm ready to get to it. I'm ready to get to it. I'm ready to get to it. Bring it down, bring it down, bring it down. I'm ready to get to it. I can't even wait. I can't even let her sing no more. Welcome, y'all, to Candid Talk, episode 148. 147, I believe. 147 with yours truly, Anthony Train Johnson. I appreciate all the love, you guys, all the support. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We'll be live today on Facebook Live, and we also will be live on the Spreaker app. So remember, always hit the link. Tell a friend about us. But to my people at home, thank you also for the love and the support. You guys can hear me. My mic is on right there. So I'm going to not hold back here. I got to introduce someone here, very prominent person right here. He's not going to say it. He's very humble, but very accomplished, from police officer to pastor to author, Dr. Andre Austin. Welcome to the show. Where's my plug here? Where is that?
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Bring it on in. Bring it on in. So, real quick, you guys, I will give the book giveaways happening. All right, it's happening. When the Sanctuary Burned Down by Dr. Andre Austin. As you see, I have 2 copies, one for me, one for you, one for me, one for you. And we will give this away by the end of the show. But first off, let's get to know our guest, man. Let's bring that back up. Let's get to know our guest. Andre, what's up, bro?
What's up, man?
Good to see you. How you doing, bro?
I'm well. Thank you for having me.
You know, I know busy schedule, man. I appreciate you coming on down here. You still located in Danville?
We Danville, Lynchburg.
Danville, Lynchburg. Yeah. Well, thank you for being here today. And honestly, what this show is, man, is to bring to light, you know, great minds, good people, people that can inspire. So I think the people would, you know, really take something home from hearing your story, man, and definitely hearing about this book right here.
Yeah.
First of all, let's start off, man, the background, the life. Can you give them an insight on it? Where you grew up, your lifestyle, what was it like, some of the things that came about growing up there?
I primarily grew up Concord, 608 Stonewall. That's where I'm from. That's where my mom, my dad, that's where they're from. That's where I grew up. Primarily staying in my grandmother's house, Alma Jackson. Mm-hmm. Grew up primarily there, and then I think I started kindergarten in Appomattox. Went from Appomattox to J.J. Frey, and I don't think J.J. Frey even exists anymore in Rustburg. Moved from my dad's mom's house to my mom's house in Rustburg, and then from there, went back to Appomattox. And then from Appomattox, went to Heritage Elementary. We lived in Greenfield for probably 5 years. Yeah. Lived in Greenfield about 5 years with my mom. So bounced around a lot as a kid. But primarily, I was raised at 608. That's where my roots are. 608 Stonewall.
608, y'all know I'm from the same place. You know what I'm saying? We're very ambitious down there at 608. You know what I mean? Family member of mine, Andre Austin. Talk about for a second, growing up in these different environments, you know, us country kids, we grew up in the country, but to be able to grow up in the city life too, especially somewhere like Greenfield, talk about the perspective that you was able to build, seeing both, you know, areas.
Well, seeing both, whether it was on purpose or not, I look at my kids now, and I grew up a lot faster than my kids did. I had to do things, even though, you know, some people say I was spoiled by my dad's side of the family. But, you know, my grandmother, my dad, I knew the value of a dollar. You know, nothing was, I had things, but, you know, I had to get wood in, you know, I had to wash dad's truck. That was responsibilities. that was held to me. And then, you know, moving to Greenfield, my mom worked so early, like second grade, my mom would already go to work, and she would call to wake me up. And so, you know, 7, 8 years old, I was getting my own self up, getting ready for school. Had the responsibility of, you know, having the key. They used to call them latchkey kids. I was there, and not just me, all my friends did. You know, we all walked to the bus stop together, 7, 8 years old, and went to school and came home, and, you know, you let yourself in the house and you hang out until mom got back before you go outside. So their responsibility, you know, I was talking to my wife, like, my son is 8, my youngest son is 8. He would not know how to get up and get himself ready, and the responsibility. So the way I grew up, I don't knock it, because I think it taught me a lot of life skills real early. It taught me not to take things for granted. And as I always say, I always keep my head on the swivel. You know, I think by the time I was 10, I'd seen so much. I don't know if you remember, I don't know if you were born yet or not, but you know, my grandmother's house, my grandmother ran a bootleg joint.
Okay, I knew that.
Yeah. So, you know, I seen a little bit of everything.
My grandma done the same. My great grandma Minnie told me she done the same.
Yeah, I remember Miss Minnie. Yeah,
there you go.
So, but that was the way of survival.
Yeah.
And you know, I don't knock it. I said it one time in a sermon. I said something about my being raised in a bootleg joint, and somebody had the audacity to, like, after the service was over, to tell me I shouldn't say stuff like that. And I politely told them, that's my story. And the woman I spoke of is the woman who bought me Jordans and bought me bicycles. I'm not saying it to disrespect her. Like, that's my story.
That's authentic.
And you know, her and my granddaddy and my aunts, my dad, they did what they had to do to make sure I was okay, and that was the life. So whenever I talk about, you know, how I grew up, is not to knock anybody, because I wouldn't trade it for the world. I wouldn't trade how I was raised, where I lived. You know, all of it wasn't always good all the time, but I wouldn't trade it for nothing in the world, because I think it helped to develop me and, you know, help become who I am.
And I gotta say, man, I think the older we get, it makes us appreciate the figures we had in our life back then. It's not truly the same right now, you know. I say Uncle Junior, you know what I'm saying? Just being able to show a young man, you know, the right way to grow up in their life. You know, I really do value those type of people now that I'm older. You know, for a second, just talk about the values real quick and the discipline. And that you've seen, and you can name someone that might have been like a role model to you in the family or something like that. You know what I mean? That kind of help you mold you as a man.
Right. Yeah. My dad was my biggest role model. Like, that was he was a man of few words sometimes, but my dad was. I can count on one hand how many sporting events he missed from the time I started playing Little League football with R.S. Payne until I finished playing semi-pro, you know, in Hampton. So he was always there. He was there at track meets, basketball games, football games. You know, even in elementary school, he played a trick on me. He was even there when I caught myself singing in the choir at in elementary school. And then I came home one day and said I was gonna play the trumpet. You know, I had took the little class to see if you can at least hear music and that stuff. And they told me I passed and had to take the paper home to your parents. So he got home and I was excited. I showed him I'm gonna play the trumpet. And his way of saying, nah, you ain't playing no trumpet. He was like, well, if you play the trumpet, you can't play football.
Oh, look at that.
I was like, well,
look at that.
Look at that. Ain't no need discussing that.
That's over.
That's over. We ain't talking about trumpet no more.
We getting outside. We going outside. You know, that's what young folks got to know. We had to go outside.
Yes,
You
indeed.
know what I'm saying?
We had video games, but that was what we did at night. The video games was what you did when you had to come inside. But my dad was my biggest role model, and then I would say, you know, once I got to high school, I had guys that I looked up to. One was my cousin Sterling, that, you know, called him Snake. So, you know, watching him, seeing some of the things he went through, and, you know, even though I was like 6, 7 years younger than him, he still let me get on his wing and got to hang out with him, you know, watch how he moved, and, as we say now, always observe the room.
Yeah.
You know, so we might be somewhere, I might be having a good time, and he would say, it's time to go. Like, no, man, like, it's
situational awareness is what we call that right there.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
yeah.
saying? And also, you know, I think also, thank you to the comment section. Thank you, Tracy Cheatwood. Thank you, Flock Williams. Real quick, comment section says, he's telling the truth. That's what you're supposed to do. 608 Stonewall Road. I remember when he was little. That's what Tracy says. We got Leah Nicole.
That's my wife.
That's your wife. She said, baby loves football.
Yeah.
No question, definitely, man. And we also have a lot of strong women.
Yeah.
I want to take time to say that too. You know what I'm saying? That was very important. You know, the strong women we had in our lives too, you know what I mean? To really just, you know, help us go along. Like I said, we appreciate it more nowadays. So talk about real quick, you're growing up, you're coming through school, you made a decision to put the trumpet down, you're back in the football field. You're on the football field, right? In your heart of hearts, mind of minds, was that the first dream, that football field? Or did you just say, this is what I do with my time right now? And
No, football, I was introduced to it when I was living in Greenfield, and we played football behind the building I lived in, building 804. It was a huge area back there, and we were just having fun. And like any little league coach, I guess, you know, somebody was out there looking in that back window looking.
Yeah.
And somebody introduced me, was like, you know, come on and you should come play. And I don't even think I told my mom that I was going to practice the first time. I think they asked me, your mama know you going? I was like, yeah. So I went to practice, came back, walked in the house. I don't think she knew that I went, that I went to the first time. I think she knew when I came back and said, I need $40 to sign up. So
yeah.
And at that point, you know, she called my dad and told him. So my dad made sure I had everything. But I went out there, you know, initially, man. You know, when I was in Greenfield, everybody was fast.
Okay. Right. Yeah. I was everywhere.
You know, everybody was fast. Everybody was athletic. Everything was a competition. So when we got to RS Payne, and they, you know, dividing the kids up to see where they go, they looking like, I don't know. So when it was time to, you know, what position? I was like, I don't know. You know. So when it was time to do conditioning, I was one of the top 3. You know, because we raced all the time in Greenfield.
Okay.
So to me, are we going from here to there? Oh, this is a race.
Yeah.
That's all I saw it was. And so at that point, they was like, no, you go for running backs.
Okay.
And I was like, all right. So then I realized I was getting the ball. And I never forget it. Booker died some years ago. He was my first little league. He was the first little league head coach.
Okay.
And Booker said something to me at 7 years old that I still tell running backs today when I watch them and watch how they move. And he told me, he said, you don't let anybody tackle you. You make them tackle you.
Okay.
At 7, I ain't, you're like, what you mean? It's the same thing. But as I got older, I understood, like, don't just, somebody come to tackle you, don't just fall.
Bring the wood to them.
Like, you do all you can to stay up. And so, but you know, that was, I fell in love with the game, and the game came natural to me.
Okay.
Which, as I got older, that could have been a crutch, because I didn't work as hard as I didn't go to the weight room until they fussed at me and told me I better be there. You know, then when I got there, shout out to Mandel Haskins when I got to Heritage. Me and Mandel would sneak out the back door of the weight room and go do something else. So, but football came natural to me.
Okay.
And I loved it. Actually, I liked basketball better, but I knew I was much better at football. And I think before I went to Heritage, I was in Appomattox, my first varsity year, and Coach Williams, he said, "You one of the few guys I've seen that could probably play any position on the football field."
Oh, wow.
So I could probably play quarterback, receiver, running back. I ended up playing strong safety on defense, but I could have played anywhere on the field, you know. So, And sometimes I had to, based on injuries and that sort of thing. So, yeah, football was it just came so natural, and I didn't have to work at it. I do think that was my handicap.
And what about the values that it gave you? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it gave me a lot of values as far as you know, what it meant. I know I'm bouncing back and forth. So when I was at Payne for 3 years, I never lost a football game. And I tell my wife the story, and you know, people laugh at it now. And then when I moved back to the country, to Concord, I started playing at Concord. The first game we lost, the first game of the season we lost, 30-6. And I had never lost a football game.
That's a reality check.
And so, you know, I was pulling race cards, because in Payne, everybody was on my team was black. You said this Candid Talk.
This is Candid Talk. Authentic talk right here. That's right. So,
you know, I'm on an all-black team in the inner city.
Okay.
All black coaches.
All right.
And we beat everything.
Okay.
We beat the Y, we beat Paramount, Paul Monroe. Like, whatever came, we demolished everything. And so I go to Concord, and, you know, I'm playing with my cousins and now who I hung out with in the summertime.
Yep.
And we get beat by Rustburg. And, you know, when I realized we were going to lose, I lost it.
Oh, man.
Like, I was cussing out everybody on the field. I knew my dad was up there. I was like, well, I'm just going to have to deal with it.
Yeah.
And I was, man, like, I was so crushed that we lost. And I'm looking at the team that we playing, and I'm saying to myself, they're not even good. Like, man, what is, like, how we, and then what really turned everything after the game, everybody lined up for little Debbie cakes and a juice. And I'm saying to myself, you gotta be kidding me. We gotta beat 30. This was my mentality at 10 years old. We just got beat 30-6. And y'all want a little Debbie cake.
Yeah, no.
And so
competitive nature.
one of the, I was very competitive, still am, but a different way out. And so I knew my dad had heard me cuss. I knew that. So I knew.
Back then, y'all, I know y'all kids cussing now.
Yeah.
Back then, y'all, oh my God, Pops heard you cussing, Mom heard you, Grandma heard you. Who did cuss? Oh man, oh, I was scared for my life.
And if somebody else heard you cussing, they was gonna tell on me.
Oh yes, man. Oh man, that's a lot of pressure right there for you to go home.
So I get in the car, you know, with my dad, and he didn't fuss at me. He knew I had never lost before.
Okay, all right.
And he said, I know this is the first game you ever lost. He said, but Andre, everybody's not gonna play like you. Everybody's not gonna have the mentality you have, and everybody's not gonna take it as serious as you do.
Okay.
All you can do is do your best and give it 100%. So that's when it all, because until then I never lost. I'd always won when it came to football. So that was difficult, you know. And then to lose 3 or 4 more games the rest of the season. But the next year we won the championship, so that was in one.
All right, there you
so
go.
We had it, but yeah, but you know,
we're going through that, you know. You get through school, you know, you learn the ins and outs of life. You learn. Everybody's not gonna roll like I roll.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You know, I take this seriously, but I gotta be responsible for my job.
Yeah.
And of course, you want to inspire others. And as you move through school, and you know, you get better in sports, and you know, I'm assuming your dream would be NFL at this point when you're playing football.
Yeah.
Through high school.
Yeah.
Talk about going up. You're in high school, and you're starting to feel like, okay, maybe I can play some college ball.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what exactly your run was with college. Did you go to college? What happened when you got out of high school?
When I got out, when I was in Appomattox, we went to Concord College in West Virginia for a camp.
Okay.
And the coach's name at that time in the 90s, the head coach name was Coach Mullins.
Okay.
And we're there at the camp, and Coach Mullins asked Coach Williams, so where is that kid going? Like, what college is, he was watching us practice. It was like, you know, what college is he going to? I said, Coach, he's on a sophomore. Like, he hadn't even started a varsity game yet. This is his first year playing varsity.
Okay.
And Coach Mullins said, I'm gonna keep in touch with him. He probably won't. I think at that time, Concord College was Division III.
Okay.
He said, I don't think he's gonna play Division III. He's a Division I player. However, I keep my eyes on him. So when I get to Heritage, I'm getting some people are watching.
Okay.
But my grades were horrible.
Mm.
I mean, horrible.
Okay.
And so I want to talk about that, Anthony, because even though my dad and my parents meant well, I didn't have anybody making sure I had everything straight to go to the next level.
I got you. Okay.
So now I get frustrated when I hear parents blame coaches because their kids don't advance or aren't prepared to go D1.
Okay.
And I think back to me, like, you got D1 talent, but you're not getting around the NCAA when it comes to what you have to do academically to go. So I knew I was good enough to go to college. By the time I got to my senior year, I knew I was good enough to go.
Mm-hmm.
Also knew I had done what I was supposed to the last 3 years in high school.
Okay.
Coach Apperson gets me out of class. It was like 2 weeks before spring break, my senior year. And he pulls me out of class, he has a letter. And he says, I don't know how to tell you this, but you got accepted to Concord College. I was like, I'm in.
That's a moment.
He said, yeah. So before then, Coach Mullen did keep in contact with me. My dad took me up, I worked out for him. Was honest, like, I don't have the grades. He was like, I know. Like,
Yeah, you already know.
He said, I already know. I know you don't have the grades. That's why you here in Concord College, because you can't go nowhere else. And he told my dad, he said, Mr. Jackson, if he can graduate high school, we can get him in, and we can put things in place so he'll get a college education.
Okay.
So that was like November. I hadn't heard anything. We did had a lady there that signed everything, got everything straight.
Okay.
So like didn't hear nothing. But 2 weeks before spring break, Coach Amber said, you got into Concord. I read the paperwork, and I had to be at summer school in June.
Mm-hmm.
So I never even told anybody that I got. My mentality at that point was, it's too late. June is 2 months away. I didn't tell the counselor. I didn't tell my parents that I got accepted to Concord College. And I don't think it was fear, because I believed I could play at the next level. Yeah. But I think it was something, and I think it was something else mentally saying, well, it's too late. Like, you can't, you can't. You're not gonna be able to go to summer school. You only got 2 months. So I ended up talking myself out of a situation, only to graduate and then look back and be like, man, you blew that.
Mm-hmm. You blew self-doubt.
Yeah. So, and then to follow them and look at who they had playing running back, like, man,
that's the part.
Yeah. Man, he ain't doing nothing.
No.
Who I think has potential to go to the next level. I said, man, make sure you're doing all you need to do, so that when that opportunity comes, you're ready for the opportunity. Okay. But we didn't know anything about going to college.
Yeah, that was a big back then. Somebody going to college.
Yeah.
It wasn't a normal thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So now I'm assuming that Plan B starts to come into mind. You don't go to college. I guess you start in the workforce. What do you?
I started working. I kept playing football. I think the year after that, I started playing football with the semi-pro team in Lynchburg.
The old Storm, Lynchburg Storm.
Yeah.
Shout out Lynchburg Storm.
Yeah, so
and old Hubcap on the team.
I played with the legend himself, Charlie Moe.
Charlie Moe, shout out.
So I did that, man. And again, I excelled. I led the league in rushing 2 or 3 years, and made all-star teams, and they inducted me in the Hall of Fame. I think like 2000, 2012, 2013, or something like that. So I did that for a few years, and finally won a championship when I moved to the Tidewater area.
Okay, all right.
So I moved there, 2005, 2006, and started playing with the the Crusaders. In our third year, we won the national championship. And I didn't run the ball then. I got to play defense, which I always thought I was a better defensive player than I was an offensive player, but they never let me play defense in high school. I just played offense. So I played outside linebacker and did my thing again.
How fulfilling was that?
Man, I think the championship was the best part.
Okay.
And then down in the Talbot area, shout out to Scorpio, shout out to Marcus.
Okay, shout out.
Coach Stitt. I had played with some guys, but on that team, man, everybody on that team, that first championship team we had, man, everybody was dogs. Everybody was a legend.
Yeah, in their own
area, man. And so, for me to start with those guys, and I was older than they were. I was that time. They called me uncle. So
okay.
I'm in my early 30s, man, and I'm still getting it. I'm like, man, y'all 22, 23.
Yeah,
I'm still out here putting in work. So that was fulfilling in itself.
Okay.
They looked at me as a leader, and they were a lot younger than I was, but I think that was reassurance. Like, yeah, I could have played it next time.
Yeah. Now I see here comment section. Divine Intervention, Duke University, then Boston University. When did that come into play when you enrolled in these colleges?
So I think I enrolled in Duke 2019, 2018.
Okay. Well, I'll put a pin in that because I want to get there through the timeline properly. Yeah. So you get your championship. You're in your 30s. Now I know you said, all right, that was fulfilling. What's my next?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Journey. Yeah. Now I don't know the timeline of this from law enforcement to pastor being ordained. Was that the pastor was first to be ordained? Or
so I started preaching in 2000.
Okay, wow.
I started preaching in 2000. My first church was in Charlotte Courthouse. I think I pastored my first church. I think I was 23, 24. And that was an experience all by itself.
23 years old, being you're still a kid.
I ain't know nothing, man. All I had about 2 good sermons in my bag, and
that is amazing, right there. That is amazing. You never see that in this day and age. Someone that young.
Yeah.
For a second, what was in you? Because clearly the Lord was working. In you. You had a great relationship with the Lord early in life.
Yeah.
What inspired you, or who inspired you to say, I want to go to this lane? It's one thing to, work hard as a Christian, but to say I want to be ordained pastor.
Yeah.
What inspired that?
Well, I say it to this day. Getting saved, that happened. Man, I had gotten involved in some stuff and was, doing some things. Yeah. And I really believed if I didn't make a change in my life, I was going to end up in jail or dead. Mm-hmm. Like I knew one of those two was where it was headed. Mm-hmm. And so I just made a conscious decision to make a change. And I tell the story too. I knew when I was at home one night, and I wasn't preaching yet, but I had started changing, changing who I was hanging with, changing some things. And it was on a Saturday, man, and my dad came home, and he yelled up the steps. He said, "Andre," I said, "Yeah." He said, "You all right?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." Mm-hmm. I was like, "You all right? Like, why you?" Yeah, what's up? And so he said, "Well, when I pulled up, I saw your car. And normally on a Saturday night, you're not home, you out. Okay. So you're not out, so I just want to make sure you was all right." And that's when it dawned on me that, like, something's happened, because I'm not out. I'm home. Yeah. Like I don't want to be out. I don't want to. So I just started going to church, man, and I had a lot of questions, and I started going to Christian Fellowship, 1015 12th Street, right across from Dunbar. A little small home front church, and Pastor Berman, it was more of a teaching church. It wasn't a lot of shouting or no choir. He was teaching, and I just started growing. And I believed that the Lord was calling me to preach. Mm-hmm. And so we went from there, and 2.5 years later, the Lord was calling me to pastor. And I still, almost 20-some years later, I tell people, I don't pastor because I don't have anything else to do. I don't pastor because I want the limelight that may come with it sometime. I pastor because I really believe that's what God called me to do.
Okay.
So, yeah, man, a little church out in Charlotte Courthouse saw something in me, and they called me to be their pastor, and I had a whole different experience about church, pastoring there.
Okay.
It was a learning experience.
What exactly was a tough crowd, man?
Well, I learned then. Let me say this too. I went to church sometime. I wasn't raised in the church. I wasn't in church every Sunday, so I didn't know church protocol, politics. I didn't know any of this.
I got you. That's live. Right.
So when I go in, I'm in for 2 years and everything. I'm at Christian Fellowship.
Okay.
There's about 10 of us, and if it was any drama, I ain't see it. Everybody got along. We came in on Sundays. We came in on Wednesdays. Everybody went home. There were no cliques, anything like that. So I started preaching in different churches, but I didn't hang around long enough to see anything.
Okay.
So my first church, I saw how church folk can be.
Yeah.
I saw how, church people can smile in your face one minute and stab in your back the next. And so I think after the first year, I said, man, this ain't no different in the streets. You got to watch your back. Even in the church, I'm used to it out there.
Yeah.
I'm used to it being somewhere and somebody might not like you. You had a run-in with somebody 6 months ago and y'all show up and you got to keep. I said, it's the same thing in the church.
Yeah.
So, but I learned, I had to go back to the foundation that I learned in Christian Fellowship, and that is nobody's perfect.
Yes.
Everybody has something that they're going through. And people deal with situations in life different ways.
Okay.
I also learned that everybody don't go to church for the same reason. Some people go, to them it's a club.
Yeah.
To them it's something they've always done since they was a kid. So, but to actually have a relationship with God and want to satisfy the body of Christ or the kingdom of God, that's far from their mind. Some people go to church because that's their domain where they control. They don't control anything at home. They never got promoted on their job, so the one place they can go and control is the church, and they'll fight you tooth and nail if you try to change anything or do anything out of the ordinary. So that was the ground where I learned, oh, this is what church really about. The politics, the tradition, some of the traditions that override what the Word of God says. And you show it to them in the Bible, and they're like, I don't care what the Bible says.
Please, man. You got me thinking here, as a pastor, there's different tactics. How do you address things like this as a pastor? I've seen some pastors call it straight out in church. Right there doing the sermon, call out whatever type of drama is going on. I've seen some that say they will pull people to the side, with a phone call. As a pastor, if you see something brewing that you don't like as a leader of the church, how do you address it?
Well, my leadership style is to first talk to that person one-on-one.
Okay.
I learned another boss I had when I was traveling for a company I worked for, Mark Zawanich. He taught me that if there's an issue, don't address the whole crowd if it's one person, because that one person will not believe you talking about them. They'll go, he ain't talking about me, so that they won't get it. So if there's a problem, you need to go directly to that person. So I'll do that. If I need to address something, I will one-on-one. You try to do it as respectful as you can, and address exactly what the issue is. You can't, in any type of leadership, you can't dance around it, because the person, most of the time when there's an issue with a person, they don't see themselves as a problem. So unless you actually address that issue, they'll never get it.
Okay.
So now, if it's something that needs to be handled right there on the spot, you have to be able to do that as well. In particular, if there's a threat or a person is verbally abusing somebody, certain issues you have to stop it right there. So you have to play all of them by ear. Every situation is different. And that's how I address situations.
We like that, man. That's very good words from Dr. Andre Austin. Real quick, guys, with Dr. Andre Austin, we will be talking about the book When the Sanctuary Burned. Thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you for the love and the likes. Very, 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 important time in Dr. Andre Austin's life here. So you learn the ins and outs, you know what I'm saying? You kind of get your feet under you being a pastor. Your confidence is up, you know what I mean? You're believing in what you're conveying to the people. Now, as you're going along through this, we have to say, I'm just wondering, you're already busy with this. How in the world does law enforcement come anywhere into play? How did it happen?
So I moved back to Appomattox, I think 2013, 2014. And I got a job at the middle school as a teacher, as a teaching assistant. Didn't know what I was going to do. And at that time, I wasn't a pastor. I was still preaching. And so I ran into retired, Donnie was the major at that time, Donnie Simpson. And he and I was talking, we ran track together in high school. And I told him, I said, I've been thinking about law enforcement. And he was like, well, you need to apply. If you want to be in law enforcement, you need to apply. So I thought about it, I prayed about it, and I did. I applied I did get hired right there on the spot, but they did hire me part-time.
Okay.
And I was out with with Wilson Staples, who was a retired sheriff also. I would go with Wilson to pick up the inmates and pick up trash in Appomattox. So that was my first assignment. And, Wilson would talk to me a lot about the county of Appomattox, his perspective, what he liked about law enforcement, what he didn't like about law enforcement. And so I did that for probably about 8 months to a year. And then I got hired full-time and went into the academy and came out. And by that time, I had started pastoring. I started pastoring at Zion Baptist in Pampa.
Okay.
So the church was they were proud. But I got so many questions about how you gonna pastor and be a police officer.
Yeah.
And my response to that, as long as I was in law enforcement, I said, both roles, I'm a servant. I serve the people in law enforcement, and I'm a servant as a pastor of the church. You treat everybody with love, you treat everybody with respect, and in both settings, there's a possibility that you're gonna meet people on our worst day. People come to church, they're going through stuff, they're hurt, they're looking for the pastor to say something to encourage them, help them along the way. And when you pull up to a house on a call, whatever transpired before I got there, I kept in mind, they're not mad at me. Something went on. However, they don't want to see me either. They don't want the police at the house. No. But I always treated people with respect, and I would often tell people, I'll treat you with respect, but if I need to, I'll also do my job.
Man, a couple of things here. How did you deal with, because becoming a police officer, especially, in the age that you did, all the way up to now, being a black man in law enforcement, the church received it well, but your old buddies back in the day.
Yeah.
Did you receive any flack from your community friends? Anybody kind of felt different towards you,
Not until, my old friends, all the guys I hung out with when I was young, by the grace of God, they all evolved and doing great things.
Okay.
So whatever we were doing in 19 and 20, they evolved
from that. Okay.
They evolved from that, and so they were respectful people in our community. So I never got any from that, but most it's like I did get was from somebody who just didn't know me.
All right, okay, I got you. All right, the flag from the random guy.
Yeah, like who didn't know me, but anybody that knew me from Appomattox, I never got any.
Okay.
I never got any. It was the people who didn't know me.
Okay.
That would, some people looked at, and especially in Appomattox at that time, until one officer left. I was the only black officer.
Okay. Yeah. I remember that. Yeah, definitely, no question.
So, and I took that as I took that as a big responsibility.
Yeah, definitely. No,
You know, to be the only black one. Then when I got promoted to sergeant, like I was the first black deputy that would be promoted in Appomattox County.
Oh, wow.
So you know, I thank Donnie for that, and but I took all of that serious.
Yeah.
I knew that people were watching me.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that it was my responsibility to represent myself a particular way, and I always tried to do that. But you know, doing that heightened part of Floyd,
Yes.
and you know all of that, the tension was there because some people saw black police officers as a sellout.
They start that up.
Yeah, because most of the time we saw white officers beating black people, shooting black people, and so it looked like that all of us was on the same, you know, all of us on the same page, and you with them and you not with us. And I always saw it from a different perspective. I never ignored or didn't acknowledge the fact that black men were being racially profiled. I never dismissed that white officers were killing black men, you know, and to actually see a murder take place in when Floyd was choked with the knee on us, to actually see that murder. And the thing that did bother me was that people didn't think I cared.
Okay.
Like I was okay with it, and I had to address some issues, but I never was ashamed of being a police officer during that time.
Okay.
I was never ashamed. I knew that somebody had to do the job, and like I said, I always treated people with respect.
Okay. And that's the evolution of us as men. You know, I had done some rallies in Appomattox and Brusburg.
Yeah.
You know, I'm shaking hands with sheriffs and things like that. And yeah, I had a couple younger guys like, oh man, you don't need to be out there with the police or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think as a man, especially as a father, you know, if you really think about, you know, being a grown man in life, the thought of, you know, bringing something together with law enforcement, whatever the case may be, at the end of the day, we want the best for our family, our community, and to move forward that way. You know, I'm not in the streets. I ain't trying to run around, so I ain't got to look over my shoulder and work.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I think, you know, that's really big to say right there, especially because you was in the thick of it at the most heightened time of tension. You know, and juggling those both worlds, because you got to take that uniform off and go to that church, and those same people that are in the streets in that church too, and they looking at Floyd on TV, and they looking at you, and you know what I mean? So that's a lot to deal with, a lot to juggle, man. In those moments, you know, especially being a police officer, man, just for a second, just talk about, I don't know if he was involved in any dangerous moments. You know, I had some officers say, you know, at times when you stop that squad car and get out, you don't know how this really is.
You don't
at all about to go. Who's on the other side of that door?
Don't know what's in our mind.
Talk about a little bit of that, you know, what you had to do mentally to always have yourself prepared for anything. You know, that's a lot of pressure and stress.
It is. Well, everybody can't be a police officer. And you know, whenever even to this day, I'm not in law enforcement anymore, but even to this day, I'll look at a situation and I understand that what that officer did, he had to make a split-second decision. Sometimes that decision is going to be wrong. And they have to live with that. But every day I put my uniform on and left the house, I knew it was a possibility that something happened to me. Like I accepted it. It wasn't any, you know, negative thinking. That's the reality of the job I signed up for. Like I knew I could get a call and things could go left. So, but like you said, you know, a lot of people don't know it. A lot of people think that doing a drug bust or something else is, you know, with law enforcement, most injuries occur in law enforcement. But the last time I checked, the two most dangerous things for a police officer is a traffic stop and driving too fast, going to a call.
All right, okay.
So you have a lot of police officers that wreck running code trying to get to an event. And stopping a car for doing 22 miles over the speed limit. You know, you stop in the car because they speed, and they might have a dead body in the car.
They on their third strike.
They
Whatever.
they know they can't. They ain't got a license. They might have a gun on them, and they know this right here is this about, and you don't know.
Okay.
You never know. And then and here's the other thing. Anybody who had a scanner in Appomattox knew some of the stuff that we had to deal with. But some people thought Appomattox was still the 1970s, 1980s, Mayberry. It is a pretty much a quiet place. It ain't as busy. But we had to deal with some stuff. We had to deal with some stuff in Appomattox, and being small, it might be 9 times out of 10 it's somebody you know. And but I got called the N-word, and got called traitor, and that sort of thing. But again, at the end of the day, you treat everybody with respect.
Yeah.
And I've arrested people, and they cuss me out, and then later they apologize.
Okay.
That's
how you carried yourself too.
Yeah. I appreciate you. Anything from adjusting somebody's handcuffs. At that moment you put the handcuffs on, you need to get them on.
Yeah.
But once the situation settles down and everything's under control, and then it's, hey, can you loosen these up? Yeah. To go back and loosen the cuffs, it goes a long way with somebody.
Okay. Okay.
But I did. I always treated people with respect.
Okay. Man, had a gun, and he had, took out his family, tried to shoot at a helicopter. It was in Concord.
Oh, that was Spade. No, I wasn't in law enforcement.
Okay.
But I when that happened, I think I was in Minnesota, because I traveled all the time before I moved back. I was in Minnesota, and I was in my hotel room, and I remember seeing it on CNN. And saying,
you have family right there.
And I'm saying, whoa, that's where I'm from. So
man,
that was, I wasn't in law enforcement, but I worked with some guys that still talk about their case. And
because these things can happen anywhere, small town, big cities.
And I think, and that's something else that I kept in mind. I kept in mind that you work in Appomattox, but 460 comes through Appomattox. People can be leaving wherever. And 460 will take you to Virginia Beach, it'll take you to Richmond. And so the people you might pull over, they might not be from there. They might be headed somewhere else.
There you go. Yeah.
So, but no, I wasn't working for law enforcement then, but I knew, I talked to some guys, worked with some guys who still talked about it.
Man, that's a lot to deal with, man. So your progress, I'm assuming you felt fulfilled with that journey in law enforcement. You sit down, and I'm guessing you said, I'm going to focus fully on pastoring, or when did authoring a book come into play after you said?
Well, so when I was in law enforcement, man, I want to say this to you before I forget.
Okay.
That there's going to come a day where you're going to arrive wherever God showed you. And you're going to look back and look at everything you've been through. And it's going to seem like it's going to happen suddenly. But you're going to look back and see all the stuff you did, all the hard work you put in is going to evolve you. And you're going to be on a place, probably be on a stage that you never saw. Mm-hmm. So I want to encourage you with that.
I appreciate that. I really, truly do.
Yeah. So definitely. While I was in law enforcement and pastoring, I got accepted to Duke. Again, I didn't go to Duke. First, I didn't think they was gonna let me in.
Yeah, that's major.
So I knew I wanted to teach and at the collegiate level. So I knew there were things I had to do in order to get there. So I applied to Duke and I get in, and then I finished Duke 2.5 years. That was an experience that I'm very grateful for.
And how old were you at this point?
At that time, 2019. So, oh man, was it 42?
And then, we get older, man. To turn on that light to say I'm gonna start learning something, that's a lot.
That's that competitive nature. I I can't play sports. I play with the kids,
Yeah.
my sons,
Yeah.
but play around with them. But that competitive nature I have, it's when I look back on it, it's been everything I've done in life. I set my mind to it. I'm locked in.
Yeah.
And I'm going. So I knew I wanted to. And the program that was set up, the master's program, it was set up for working adults.
Okay.
So the first week of each semester, we had to be on campus, and then after that, it was online, and then so that's how the program worked. But that journey, man, it opened my mind up because I got to meet a lot of great people.
Okay.
It got me out of my comfort zone. It definitely challenged me. I never forget the first day. They made it perfectly clear that just because this is Duke Divinity School does not mean it's going to be easy because we're faith-based.
Right. Okay.
They call it Big Duke.
Okay. All right.
The main Duke says you can have a divinity school, but there's still a standard, a Duke standard,
Right. Okay.
that must be held in place. So it was challenging the first couple of semesters, but I learned how to. Okay, this is what I need to do, and that's so. I did that, man, and then I knew I wanted to get my doctorate degree.
Okay.
And so I looked at different schools. I even looked at Duke. They encouraged me to go to Duke, but I couldn't do that no more.
Okay, all right. Enough of that right there.
Like I had 2.5 years of this, and you telling me the doctoral program is set up the same way this is? I can't do that. I can't. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I love to have a doctorate from Duke, but I'm cool with a master's. And so, I researched schools, and I ended up going to Boston University.
Okay.
It's another
That's
prestigious.
yeah.
So, and that program worked better. It was kind of sort of set up the same way, but it was only one class at a time.
Okay.
Until you got to the writing part. So I did that, and toward the end is where I was called from. I was at Zion Baptist for 9 years. And then the Lord put me where I am now at Loyal Baptist in Danville. So I'm still going to school. I get to Danville, and I had no plans on going back into law enforcement. And somebody called me and said, "Hey, is this Andre Austin?" I said, "Yeah." "You want to be a police officer in Danville?" I was like, "I don't think it's going to work my schedule." I said, "Well, we can put you in as a school resource officer. You'll have Monday through Friday, 6:30 to 2:30. Okay. I said, "Well,
that's smooth.
Yeah. Okay. So I ended up going to Danville, worked there for about a year, and that was another great experience.
Okay.
A lot different than mathematics.
Oh, I can't imagine, man. I can't imagine. A lot different. Has to be.
Yeah. I was an SRO at the one of the middle schools in Danville, and that was I would see some of the teachers in mathematics, and I would say, "You got it made right there.
Okay.
Don't you ever complain.
Yeah.
Don't you ever complain."
Different area, different children, different everything.
You need to be thankful where you are.
Man, there's a lot, man. There's a lot.
Big culture difference.
Yeah.
But I just got to this church, a much bigger church, a historical black church, the oldest church in Danville. I think we probably have 100, a little over 100. So more responsibility. And I trained them there for 9 months. Okay. And I get a phone call. I had actually came back to Lynchburg to do a revival. Okay. And I get a phone call that the church was on fire. Mm-hmm. And, I was numb.
9 months into it.
9 months,
This is a perfect segue, by the way. Perfect segue by Dr. Andre. He's done this before. I wanted to go to the book. He went right to when the sanctuary burned down. Right here, you get this on Amazon right now. That moment, it's interesting that you say that. I read, it's good news and good news. The good news, I was able to get this book before the show started. The even better news, I was able not to finish it, so I won't tell you guys the whole story. You know what I mean? Because I will tell the whole thing here. But what you said right there, that phone call, your world stops. Because when you're in life and, you've been doing well, as you really think as a Christian, as a man, everything's in order, so let's roll. Yeah. Something like that happens out of nowhere.
It was, you know, I had never really been through anything traumatic in ministry.
Okay.
You know, as far as dealing with a church, you know, I had a couple of, you know, church people
Yes.
who deal with that. But I had never dealt with anything of that magnitude. And so I get the phone call, and Deaconess Buchanan made the phone call, and she passed the church on fire. And I hear her talking to somebody else, and I'm trying to talk, the phone hang up. I call her back, she don't answer. And so I had just got to the hotel room, and I sit on the edge of the bed, I'm like, what is going on? Like, it was a moment of complete silence. And I did. I prayed. I said, God, I don't know if she meant to say the church on fire. The church also has a parsonage in Danville. I was like, well, did she say the house is on fire? Like, I'm trying to, like, I don't know, did she say the church and mean my house is on fire? Yeah. And I call who's the chairman of our Deacon Barnett, called Deacon Williams. I said, Deacon Williams, Deacon Buchanan just called me and said the church on fire. And he said, yeah, Pastor's on fire. I'm headed over there now. And he said, no, I just got there, it don't look good. So I said, all right, I'm on my way. So I'm driving back to Danville, and you know, this Candid Talk, and I believe that since I've been saved, that everything that my relationship with God is open as it is. Okay. And so me and God have some talks. Okay. Back there on 29. Yeah. You know, I'm like, look, ain't no doubt. You told me this was my next assignment, to Lord you back, but you ain't telling me nothing about no fire. Like, I don't know what you thinking, but you know, I'm just talking like, like, no, man, I don't know these people, they don't know me, and then the church on fire, I don't know if it's burned down, like what? And so I finally get there, and I can see probably about 40 or 50 people from the church just standing outside. They just put the fire out, and we don't know how much damage been done. And so finally the fire chief tell us, you know, give us about 30 minutes, we'll let you guys go inside. He says a lot of smoke damage. And I remember asking the fire chief, I said, you might not know, but what does it look like to you? And he said, Pastor, you got a lot of smoke damage, but it's more water damage than anything. I think they dumped like 5,000 gallons of water just to make sure it was out. And he said, I ain't gonna say it's completely destroyed, but it's probably $1 million worth of damage. He said, I'm not an insurance guy, but he said, I've been doing this long enough to see. He said, it's, and so we walked in and see walked through the whole church, saw where the fire started, and saw the damage, the water damage. Of course, you could smell the smoke. Then to go downstairs to the fellowship hall, and it was raining from the ceiling, like water was still dripping from the floor. We probably had a foot of water at the bottom of the sanctuary. It just built up. And then downstairs, it was probably 3 or 4 inches of water instead of coming down. So, you know, man, to look at that, and one, the first thing I'm thinking to myself is, man, I ain't cut out for this. Like, but I know you the pastor.
Yeah, this is like, there's nowhere to run, nowhere to go.
Ain't nowhere to go. They looking for you for encouragement. They looking for you. What do we do now? They're looking. But that night when I went back to the house, you know, I was just sitting there, and I think reality started to set in. Okay. And I had thought about everything I had done in ministry, everything I had done in life, and I realized, like I just told you, that everything had prepared me for this moment.
Okay, all right.
It was you know, I hadn't took a class in seminary on what you do when your church catch on fire. Yeah. But just thinking back on stuff, you know, one of my psychology classes I took into Dr. Holton, she said that during moments of trauma, oftentimes we try to look for the perfect words to say to people. But reality, all we gotta do is be present. You don't have to say anything. Just be there. Just let them know that they're there. You sit with them and don't have to say anything. So a lot of stuff started coming to my mind, and then as we're trying to figure our way out, I had also picked up a practice at Duke. I had started journaling sometimes, just writing down, good or bad, just writing down some things, what happened in the day. So the book started off as me journaling. I didn't have any plans on writing a book. It was just me getting through the day and writing some stuff. And then my youngest daughter, Drea, he said, well, Dad, you ought to write a book. And we talked about it. And I was like, I said, maybe. And the further the months went on, I said, yeah, I got to put this, I got to write this down. Like this has to go. And I got to make a book.
That was amazing. Here's the thing that I noticed, from starting off with this book. A lot of people have tried to write books, but to fully connect with the reader, I feel like, reading this, I feel like I was looking through your eyeballs and in your shoes in the moment. And there's some things I want to say is very important, not to give the full book away, but in the beginning, I want to point to when disaster struck, and you made a note here on your keynotes about not giving the devil credit.
Yeah.
Saying that sometimes the Lord allows bad things to happen to further develop you.
Yeah.
And also to further show the glory of God when you overcome the situation. I think a lot of people at home need to hear something like that, because, we do, in the Christian community, we'll jump quick and say, the devil working against it, the devil, the devil, the devil. I never heard the phrase, don't give the devil the Lord's credit until I read this right here.
Yeah.
Talk about that for people at home. That's very vital for the people.
Yeah, like I said, I wasn't brought up in church, but I always heard coming up as a kid when anything bad happened, it was the devil. Yeah. But if you read the Bible, most of the key people that God used went through something in life. We oftentimes reference the story of Job, and Job losing everything. And we skip over him losing everything, and we go right to the end of the story, how God gave it all back. Yes. And we shout, he lost it, but God gave it back. But we never pay attention to what's in between those. Job was depressed. He was suicidal. His wife said, just curse God and die. And we oftentimes give her a bad rep because she tells Job to curse God and die. But we have to remember, if Job lost everything, she also lost everything. Very true. If Job's kids died, that means her kids died. Yes. So how many birthdays did they have to send a message on Facebook? Today is so-and-so's.
Yeah.
Happy heavenly birthday.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but the devil didn't have any authority. The devil had to ask God, is it okay if I mess with Job? Mm-hmm. And God says, you can do whatever you want to do to him, but you can't kill him. So, God, not that he allows things to happen, but oftentimes God does allow things to happen. And we can't get so caught up in believing that when every time something bad happens, that it's always the devil. Mm-hmm. Because the Bible is clear, I think in Romans chapter 5, it talks about when you go through persecution and when you face trials, it's God's way of building you up. It's God's way of building up your character, your integrity, your perseverance. Mm-hmm. And so when that happened, I still didn't know the complete history of Loyal, but when that happened, I just celebrated my second anniversary, and one thing I said was, we've been in a relationship as pastor and people for 2 years, but it feels like 5 because of what we've been through 15 months. It forced us to grow more. And so I refused to stand in the pulpit or to go anywhere and say, even when someone said, what the devil meant for evil, God meant for good, and I would say the devil didn't have anything to do with it. There we go. That's big. Like, I don't, that's not. And so what happened is, once they were able to get up in the ceiling, you've never been there, but it's a historical church. The ceilings are God knows how high. Okay. they ways. Even once you get in the balcony, it's still like 100 feet up. I'm exaggerating,
Yeah,
but it's still,
yeah.
you know. But once the contractors got up there, they said at some point the ceiling was gonna come down because termites had ate it up. And so it's not like a ceiling here where you can see, like, what's going on over there? They're like termites. You so far up, you don't, you're not, and nobody's going up there inspecting the ceiling. So I asked Brett, I said, how much had they done? He said, Pastor, it's hard to say. He says, but, you know, maybe another year or so, the whole thing would have just came down. Like they ate, the termites had ate the wood. So I was like, the devil wouldn't, he's not here to protect us.
Nope.
You know.
So it was meant to come down?
It was gonna come down eventually.
Yeah, oh man.
So, but that was a trying time, but I didn't. And I tell people all the time, and you can laugh. This is a comic moment. I'm also a comedian, for those who don't know.
There you go, yo.
If you got,
Here we go.
if you got ball tires on your car, when one of them go out, do not go on social media talking about the devil that made your tire go out. The devil had,
You knew better.
the devil had nothing to do with your tire. You should have put tires on your car. Don't stop blaming the devil.
You knew better. You knew better. All y'all knew better. That's a great point, right?
But we do. We make bad decisions in life. We choose to do different things, and then when the bottom drop out, we blame the devil. But in reality, it's the consequences we face is a reality of our own actions.
There you go.
And so you can't.
There you go. There you go.
You can't. You can't. You got to pay your light bill, so you go.
There you go.
You go spend the money on something else, and then you get on social media talking about devil busy, lights that got turned off.
No, it don't work like that, man. And I think it's very important you say this, man, because the people at home, the main thing I would hear with, maybe a friend or whatever that's going through things, oh, I just can't catch a break. I just can't catch a break. I feel like, Lord picking on me, da-da-da. You got to understand the lesson at the end of the testimony or the test.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And, what I realized, when I went to my near-death experience is how does your, trauma, whatever you go through, help others? You know what I mean? You don't know who, learned from your experience or who grew from your experience or who started leaning on the Lord through your experience. So I think it's very important that you put that in the book because a lot of people don't say that, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you guys can understand that sometimes you have to thank the Lord when you're going through a test.
Yeah.
I know it sounds crazy, but you have to thank him because you have to know that he's about to further better me, and this is going to be for the glory of God.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think that was very important to say there, right there. And also here, I had another note here. The character. Talk about just real quick, because I know you had a moment where you wanted to make a phone call and you couldn't reach your pastor at the moment.
Yeah.
We lean on the Lord a lot, but I think we also we have to appreciate that calming voice or someone in life. I have it with pastors I have close with. Just talk about a little bit of having boots on the ground, if you will.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Someone to lean on for a little bit of, a little calm down, a little, hey, you speak about your pastor for a minute, and just how important sometimes those moments feel to you. You know what I mean?
So in our so my thesis work for my doctorate was the unhealthy black bivocational pastor, building a community of care. Okay, and so my personal experience to lead up to your question, my personal experience in ministry and research shows that black people I believe you need a mentor in everything you do in life. I believe in mentorship. And so my thesis work, which is also a book about to come out, but my thesis work, I talk about the importance for a pastor to have mentorship, to have friendship, and to have rest. That community, like you need a friend, You need a mentor, and you need to learn how to take rest. And so for me, my pastor, Pastor Leroy Mitchell, is my mentor. Pastor Everett Berman is my mentor. I need to talk to somebody. Just to encourage, just to bounce ideas off of. And in the book, he wasn't available, which I also believe sometimes that when we reach out to other people, I think God has a way of making sure that nobody's available. So we keep talking to him.
Lean on the Lord. That leans into the wilderness part of this.
Yeah.
In this book, going through the wilderness. I remember you specifically saying, you're in that wilderness for several reasons.
Yeah.
And one is for you to understand that the Lord is what your anchor is going to really truly be.
That's it.
So definitely, okay, that makes a lot of sense right there. We do have comfort in people on boots on the ground, as I like to say. But in that true wilderness is when you're really leaning, and for the glory of God, you actually understand more.
Right. Yeah.
So and I won't, basically, you guys, you're going to learn a lot about the journey of going through something. And I feel like this book can relate to any of you people. I know you guys may not have had anything like a house burned down, church burned down, but this is a story of going through something and how do you assess it, get through it while leaning on the Lord, and what the lessons come going through something like that.
And that's what some of the feedback I've gotten from the book, that's exactly what they say.
Anybody can relate to this.
I had a lady tell me, she said, Reverend Austin, I read your book because I wanted to hear the story. She says, but reading the book is so relatable to some things I've been through in life. And, the difficult moments and God giving you small victories to give you the strength to go on just a little while longer. So I tell people, I didn't think, that wasn't my idea with the book, but some of the feedback I've gotten is, this book is so relatable to any situation you go through in life. Feeling alone, feeling by yourself, wanting to do things that you can't, feeling like, I will say this in the book, I talk about, it's a part in the book where my humanity really comes out, and I feel like I'm too good to go through this. God, I'm not perfect, but I've been faithful. And if I've been faithful, why do I have to go through this? And all of the anxiety and the burnout, and I thought about quitting. I was like, man, I ain't, church folks start being church folk. My mind is strictly on how we're gonna repair this church and get back in it. And some of them had other ideas. Man, I ain't got time.
That's a lot, man.
And the thing is, that it doesn't frustrate me, but the thing that it constantly reminds me when I was contemplating quitting, I would always tell myself, I don't have to do this. I don't. There are other things I can be doing. But in those moments, it's always God reassuring me. You're right, you don't have to, but this is what I called you to do. And I have lived outside of God's will before. I've been outside of God's will.
Man, trying to drive that boat on your own.
And I tell people all the time, I've been outside of God's will, and no matter what I go through in life, I'd rather be in His will, going through it, than outside of His will. So, it was moments I was like, I ain't got to do this. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't want to be outside your will either.
There you go. No, man. Nobody you do better, man.
I ain't going that route no more. So, okay, God, let's go. Let's go to work. What you want me to do today? Let's go.
And I think it was really cool to see, because the perspective that you broke down for the people of when the Lord speaks to you, and I kind of thought that maybe I was the only person that felt this way, but for me, with my relationship with the Lord, when He speaks to me, it is clear as day. Sometimes it's stern. And you might not hear what you want to hear.
No.
You know what I mean?
No,
and just appreciation I have for having that relationship with Him, and for Him being able, and to see that written in your book, how you wrote that the Lord, when He spoke to me in that car, He spoke loud. It was clear. It was clear today. You know what I mean? The relationship with the Lord, and just talk about how real that is.
And man, sometimes I wonder, and I don't want to get too deep, but sometimes I wonder if I'm the only one that really has a relationship with God.
I know exactly what you. Yeah.
And when I say that, I mean I'm talking about preachers,
Yeah.
Anybody,
Mm-hmm.
because I know what God means to me.
Yeah.
I know what God means to me. I know my relationship, what God means to me, and so I know that not only does God give me direction on what to do, but God is also, He loves me enough to correct me when I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And the reason I say I wanted people to have the same relationship, because I wonder sometimes if we receive hearing God's voice both ways.
All right.
You know, we always brag about the Lord told me to do something positive, but we never hear about people saying, man, the Lord told me to close my mouth and go home somewhere and sit down.
Yeah, man. Yes.
So,
Yes. Yes.
you know, we talk about being led by the Holy Spirit, and I oftentimes say that not only will the Holy Spirit lead you in the right direction, but that same Holy Spirit will correct you when you're wrong.
Might get scolded. That's like
Yeah.
I said. You might get scolded.
You might find yourself somewhere, and Lord, pretty much I told you to go somewhere and sit down.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but having a relationship, for me, having a relationship with God is just reassurance.
Okay.
That no matter what I go through, I have a relationship with God, that I can be honest with God. And I oftentimes tell people that I know there's a reverence to God, respect, but we should never fear God.
Okay.
The Bible talks about fearing God, but it's not from a perspective of when God comes, we run in the other direction.
Okay.
Not the type of fear that we have when a dog shows his teeth.
Okay.
That fear that the Bible talks about with God is having a reverence for God, a respect of God. And so I respect God enough and I fear God in that way, but I'm also honest with God.
Okay. Okay.
And so if I'm having a bad day, I can tell God, this day is not going well. This is not what I expected when I went to this meeting. This is not what I expected, how this to happen. God, I don't understand why you did it. I don't even know why you got me over here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't even know why, like,
Yeah.
and so that's why I question, I wonder is everybody's relationship like mine? Because Jeremiah questioned God.
Yeah.
And I know we got that mindset of whatever happens, whatever the Lord does, you accept it, don't question God.
Yeah.
But Jeremiah questioned God. Job questioned God.
Okay.
And then if you don't like either of them, Jesus questioned God on the cross.
Yes.
He said, why have you forsaken me?
Yep. Yep.
So I use those to say that in moments of anxiety or uncertainty, it's okay to ask God why. Because when my dad died, I asked God, why did you take him there? Like, his only grandchild is 2 years old. He'll never get to experience, watch her grow up. I said, God, I know a whole lot of people that could have died except for my daddy.
Yeah.
And so I questioned God, like, why would you take him? Like, why would you take him at a young age? Why would you take him now? And God answered me about 6 months later.
That's something, man.
So,
That's something, man.
you know, when the fire happened, I asked God, like, what we doing?
Yeah, exactly. What's going on?
Like, what are we doing? What we doing?
Man, that's so great you said that, because 2023 was pivotal for me and you. You went through your fire at the church in September. I went through, I'm gonna lose my life with a fire in November.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I reached out to you from my hospital bed, and I now think it's amazing that you were there to talk to me, but you didn't even present your issues or trauma.
No.
And a lot of people will do that. You
Yeah.
tell them, man, I'm going to something here, they go, yeah, man, they got me, me too, man. You know, man, be like that. You know, you didn't even bring none of that. You know what I'm saying? And I think it's very important that you say the question of God, because when I went through my fire, I definitely was, you know, riding in an ambulance. I'm waiting for the Lord to let me know why.
Yeah.
Especially this, you know,
Yeah.
horrific. Why this?
Yeah.
You know, I try to be a good man and all these things. And like you say, he will come to you. He came to me my third day in my hospital. in the middle of the night, and it was almost if he picked me up out that bed and sat me down right there beside me.
Yeah.
And I mean, I remember feeling it like yesterday. I remember feeling like a kid sitting on the stoop, and I felt so small compared to being this. I didn't even feel worthy to look up.
Yeah.
Beside me. I really felt. I really was.
Yeah.
And he, it's funny you said it because he said to me, stern and direct. He said, I gave you a talent, and I also gave you a responsibility. I was doing these shows and these venues, stand-up comedy, going all over the place. I started smelling myself. I started leaning on myself and leaning off of the Lord, leaning on me more.
Yeah.
Praying less and all. And I also started going to certain venues and nightclubs saying, Lord, I'm gonna leave you at the door, man. It's crazy, Lord. I can't bring you up to these folks. I can't talk about you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the Lord stopped my world on a dial. All that stuff I was leaning on, all the manly things, all you called up and how you look, well, now you see that I am the way, and you take me with you wherever you go.
Yep.
And then he showed me a vision of talking in front of thousands and thousands of people. That's what the hospital did. And I remember snapping out of it and tears running down my face. I mean, I'm crying hard. I remember the nurse lady coming over, family, and they think I'm in pain because I'm in my third day. What can we do with pain? And it was tears of joy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It was true tears of joy. I said, I'm going to be all right. The Lord let me know my mission and my plan. And from that moment on, I didn't care about the skin grafts. I didn't care about how to learn how to walk. They kept sending a psych doctor to me wondering why I wasn't depressed. Yeah. They said, you're a young man in your 30s, you look good, your body's going to be altered for the rest of your life. We know you have depression somewhere in that night. Yeah. I'm going to tell you right now, I feel amazing for what the Lord just told me my mission is. Yeah. And I feel great that he took me out that lake of fire and said, that's not for you. Yeah. This is for you. So I think it's very important that you say that with a conversation with the Lord, y'all. Talk to the Lord, y'all. Honestly. You're going through it, go on to him. Say, look, Lord, give it to me. I might not like what you got to say.
Tell it to me.
Please tell it to me so I can evolve. And all it turns to is the glory of God in the end, especially for me. I've taken every venue I go to now. Yeah. And I've been way more successful than I ever was. Leaning on my, you say, out there in the wild by yourself. What would you say? Leaning on yourself? You know what I'm saying? Out of his will. I was out of his will. Yeah. And now in his will, doing it with, him and with me. Oh, man. It's an amazing thing here. So guys, I won't give too much of this book away. I could talk all day to Dr. Austin, man. I really could, man. But I have some important, you mind if we give this book away? Yeah. Right now, we're going to do the giveaway right here when the sanctuary burned. And again, real quick, Andre, we're going to get this book at Amazon.
You get on Amazon. I still got a hustler mentality, so you can get out the back of my trunk too.
Pull up delivery, man. I love it here.
Amazon. You can DM me. You can DM. I don't think the company. Well, you can DM me for a book. You can go to Amazon, get it a Kindle, paperback, hardcover. I see the little homie got a hard copy. You know what all out.
I was taught if we're gonna do it, we do it right. I was always taught that it's a 608 baby. That's right. That's right. That is it right there, man. So we're gonna give this book away here real quick here. Funny part here, guys. Thank you for the new subscriptions. I really do appreciate it. One thing though, we had about 30 new subscribers in 2 days, 2 or 3 days. There was one instruction you guys may have forgot to write down the done part. The when you're done, when you're finished. So we couldn't see who the subscribers was, but we did have one particular person who took their time. Miss Amanda Bowles. You wrote done. You win the book. When the sanctuary burned down, Dr. Olson, you get a hard copy. I didn't get you the other one. I got you the hard copy. You can take this home. I will get this to you. I don't care if I got to drive to you, send it to you. We're going to enjoy this read. And could I possibly even maybe a phone call? I may want to have part 2 when I get to the end of this book or something from you when I get to the end of this book right here. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, I can go forever, man. But we're here for a good time. Not a long time. Andre, any shout outs? Anybody you want to take time and get some words to thank anybody?
Thank my family, of course, 608. My Aunt Emma, my Aunt Poo Poo, Aunt Maggie, who's not with us. But definitely my family on 608. My mom's side of the family, Dawn, Stanley, Aunt Sandra, Aunt Debbie. family is key. Family is the core of everything. And definitely want to thank my church. I want to thank both churches. Man, look, you got me. Hold on, let me back
take
all
your
the way.
time. Take your time.
I want to thank the Appomattox County Sheriff's Office because Donnie Simpson, who is the former sheriff, Robbie Richardson, who's the sheriff now, they made room for me to make sure I could continue my education.
All right.
So also Travis Fireball, who is now the major, trying to work the schedule, knowing that I already had permission to leave for a whole week to go down to Duke.
Yeah, look at that.
We already short staffed, and so what they did, I have to thank Appomattox County Sheriff's Office for, made sure that I always continue my education and work with that area. Also, my former church, Zion Baptist, who I always tell them that I didn't leave going to a better church. I left going to another assignment.
Okay.
So thankful to Zion Baptist who watched me develop and grow.
Okay.
And through all of that. Also, my church now, Loyal Baptist, the best church at 460 at Holbrook Street,
I like it.
Danville, Virginia.
I like it.
So we've been through a lot, headed in the right direction. Church growing, we're growing spiritually, which is more important to me, and also we're growing physically. And so thank for them. And last but not least, thank my kids, all four of them, Monique, Andrea, Landon and Zion. Thank all my kids and my wife, who were high school sweethearts at Heritage.
Wow.
And hadn't seen each other in 20-some years. And,
wow.
Saw each other, she just couldn't resist me.
Look at that. Y'all made me knock the cameras and mess with it. I like it.
She took one look at me and she said, "You just as fine now as you was in high school."
Small. Smooth, but got right here. I like that right there. A little something for the home front right there.
Yeah. And,
I like it, man.
But we did, man. We've been inseparable for the past 2 years. And, getting ready to celebrate 1 year in marriage on Sunday.
Okay.
So thankful to her. And I said I won't ever get married again. I didn't ask for man, but God had other plans, and the role that she plays in my life and in my ministry is amazing. If I can, we have a publishing company, and our publishing company published this book.
Oh, wow.
So,
wow.
A lot of things just lined up.
Yeah, that's
I had some fears about writing, and she basically said, "That's what I do." Like,
what you wrote?
Yeah, we got it. So, so grateful for her, man, and the role that she plays in my life and our kids' life. Very supportive, and above that, man, thank God for everything. I gotta say that because some people would say, "Oh, he thanked everybody but God."
Yeah, they can't wait to say that word. They're waiting.
God is the foundation of everything. Yeah, he's the foundation of everything. As you said, man, I'm just so grateful for everything that where I am now in ministry, the Lord showed it to me about 15 years ago. And didn't anticipate going through some of the things I went through to get to where I am now. But just grateful. I had no idea that would be my first book. No idea I would get ready to release my second book next month. So, well, probably the end of this month, actually.
Okay.
And got some other things out there. Shout out to Sunshine Marketing Solutions, the publishing company, marketing firm. We do a lot of things. So the company is going well. Okay. And God just opened up doors, man, putting us in platforms. And I don't want to leave here without saying I'm proud of you.
Yeah, appreciate that.
I'm proud of you, man. I'm proud of your perseverance, your stick-to-itiveness, if that's even a word. But,